Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I welcome all of you back to the Zone, where tonight, ladies and gentlemen, a channel I've sadly not really sort of seen for a bit of a while now, and something I'm really looking forward to is the Psych2go channel. Now, for those at all interested, this is a channel that is entirely devoted to aspects of mental health. And there are many things that this channel goes into. In fact, just before we actually get started, and this will be pretty obvious for context reasons, this is going to be necessary for the sake of the beginning of this year. Let me just showcase to you guys exactly sort of like what we've got. There we go. And immediately we go straight to the video section, and it goes through things like what porn addiction apparently allegedly does to the brain, intimacy, and there's quite a lot of things that they go into. Because one thing you have to emphasize, ladies and gentlemen, is that Psych2go goes into quite a lot, and they've been doing this for a very long time, and it would be of some interest whatsoever to actually go into basically everything they've ever done, sort of like almost like going backwards. We start at the modern day, and we work all the way backwards. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know necessarily how many people are like behind the Psych2go channel, if it's one person or it's
Change
like
can be
a few small like-minded people, but I get the impression that these are the sort of people who have studied the psychology and psychosis and sociology. These are the sort of people that know so much about human society, history, the history of research into cognitive thought, neurodiversity matters, media and communication, critical theory. Some people might even turn to astrology to see if there's any correlation, if any at all, between sort of what people go through and certain things that people implement, and whether or not this forced implementation actually ever accelerates or completely deteriorates some people's mental health. Because one thing we have to bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, and it is a sensitive subject, but it is not sensitive, however, to pretend that we all have this. It's something that affects each and every one of us, and it is of nothing to be ashamed of to occasionally be reminded sort of things that we don't particularly like to admit. Among many other things is, well, one thing that Psych2go actually does quite a lot, they bring up subjects about trust and who do you know to turn to when you've had a series of bad experiences. And then you come into the subject matter, which is change. And this might be something that might strike me dumb with what Psych2go have to say, because let me tell you guys a very short story about what happened this time last year, 1st of January 2023. I worked basically all day from home. I made videos out the wazoo. I made roughly about like 15 videos in total, and just in that day. I pushed and pushed and pushed. I made thumbnails. I sent emails to people I wanted to do correspondence with. I did so much. And then when like roughly 9 o'clock came about, I remember telling my family about it, about how accomplished I feel for literally doing about 12 hours of work inside 9.5 hours. I literally just basically got just sort of like, I had this sort of, the shrug of the shoulders sort of thing, as though, so what? It was the so what look you could possibly give. And the reason I mention this, ladies and gentlemen, is because even by the time that day came to an end, I remember literally just about ready to go to bed and actually reflecting on something very interesting, is that despite all the work that I had done, despite how proud I was of myself, the reality of it is that I was the only person who was proud of what I did. And absolutely nobody else was. Which, I don't know why, ladies and gentlemen, but that's something that possibly might need to change. I need to stop and I even mentioned this yesterday on JFA about I need to learn to stop putting other people's opinions about me above my own. I need to respect my own opinions more and not be bullies like that or not made to feel that bad. But whether that is among the other only thing that needs to change, we'll wait and see about that, because there's probably a lot more. I can say that much. So, if you guys want to check out the original video for yourselves, links will all be in the description down below. So, let's do it.
Change can be powerful. It helps you improve, forget, and heal. However, it's not always easy to recognize when you need to do it. In today's video,
the reason why it's not easy to change is because it implies that what you're doing is wrong, and that with no guidance or no way to tell you that you're either doing it right or wrong, you're beginning to wonder as to what more do you have to give, why it's you who has to specifically change, and you get no credit for anything else you've done. I mean, yes, you can argue immediately the nausea that you can't be nostalgic about failure, but that it's not that people don't want to change. It's they wonder, is it for the better? Is it for their own benefit? Of something of that description, I should say. Oh.
Let's explore some signs you need to change to help you grow for the better. First is ignoring core commitments. What things in life do you feel like you always sabotage? Do you continually switch jobs, jump from one diet to another, or frequently argue with someone about the smallest things? Inner conflict happens when you don't honor your core commitments and needs. According to Brianna Weist, international best-selling author of the self-help book The Mountain Is You, core commitments are your primary objectives in life. Examples are being in control, being free, or being loved. Your core need, on the other hand, is the opposite of your core commitment. The more you ignore your core need, the louder your core commitment symptoms will be. Here's an example. If your core commitment is to feel loved by others, then your core need is self-love. If you don't honor that need, you may go
I'm actually, again, it's really interesting because there are like many points where I'm sort of like either I sort of and don't agree at the same time, because okay, and again it's the symptom I mentioned earlier, is that it's not that I don't stay true to what I believe, it's not that I don't want to succeed, it's not anything to do with that, but I just don't know how much longer I can keep going with it without realizing I'm still exactly where I am and absolutely nothing has changed. And then the worst part about something like that is that the harsher side of it comes out, and the fact that it's not so much that nothing has changed, but people seem to have become completely disinterested in this. And that's like, it's a very difficult one to like try to explain properly, because I sort of agree with it a little bit more now, but I'm also beginning to wonder, like, again, you can be committed to your core, you can, you could strive to achieve your needs as much as you want, but if it's not reciprocated, whether it's you want to be if you want people to like you, I mean, it doesn't have to be anyone specific, but if it's not reciprocated, if it's not accepted, then what happens there, and how much time you've wasted on something like that. It's again, it's really, really interesting, because I don't even know if it's even based on false beliefs or not. But that's, again, another rabbit hole.
To extreme lengths just to feel love, such as lowering your self-worth, getting consumed by superficial standards, and more. This can sabotage your chances of having a healthy relationship with yourself and with others. Next, the Peter Pan syndrome. Peter Pan's story, although fantastic and magical, is quite tragic and sad. He's a boy who fears growing old. Because of this, he chooses to live in Neverland, a place with never-ending fun and adventures. While other kids grow up and take on responsibilities, Peter Pan remains forever young and alone. Even though it's a children's story, they are real-life Peter Pans. In 1983, psychologist Dr. Dan Kelly published a book about Peter Pan syndrome, which outlines the characteristics of adults who refuse to grow up. They struggle with commitment, avoid issues and responsibilities, rely on others, and more. And if they are Peter Pans, then of course they are Wendy's. They're romantic partners or people who tolerate the other person's lack of accountability. They also end up doing all the work. It's good to have a little child at heart Peter Pan in all of us, but don't let it interfere with your natural development. Failure is normal and life is full of chances. As J.M. Barrie, the creator of Peter Pan, says, the moment you doubt whether you can fly, you cease forever to be able to do it. Barrie also says, if you cannot teach me to fly, teach me to sing. Next is stagnation.
Okay, well, I suppose the only thing I could really add to the whole Peter Pan syndrome is that, to be honest, I don't really believe in it myself. The thing. Okay, so one of the things. Okay, because listen, I've read Peter Pan, and but one of the things I also kind of wanted to bring up into it is that you have to remember in Peter Pan, there are other characters aside from Peter, Wendy, Michael, John. There's, you got Captain Hook, you got Mr. Smee, you got the mermaids, the Indian. Again, you got basically adults who live in, who are sort of exist in Neverland as well. Is that just meant to be? I mean, you could. I mean, what would be worse? You're in Neverland and you're an adult, but the reality is that you're Captain Hook, someone who's scarred by basically kids playing childish pranks. Basically, the problem. Okay, so the issue I have with this is that even just trying to think about it is the idea that, well, the world can sometimes be a cruel and harsh place, and sometimes it's caused by both ends of the age spectrum. Sometimes by young people who have no idea what they're doing. Sometimes by older people who know exactly what they're doing. And as a result in all this is the idea that, to be honest, both sides can be blamed. It could be somebody's fault, and there are many occasions where people on both sides will never really take the blame in any situation. You don't need to be young or old to have a lack of accountability or responsibility. I mean, just look at Boris Johnson, for example. Look at Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and her very short tenure in government, for the chaos it caused the Bank of England, who had to intervene, to this enormous this recession that is on the horizon, to the elitism that this government has played somewhat before Liz Truss, but immediately afterwards. That's obvious as well. And what consequences does Liz Truss play for any of this? Nothing. She gets a prime minister's salary despite for only being in the job for less than 6 weeks. And she seems to show no remorse or take any sort of action whatsoever for the consequences of her actions. You don't even face legal action for that sort of thing. And you're trying to tell me that's that you're really trying to tell me she's just childish and naive. No, that's not the case. I think a problem with this, the idea of bringing Peter Pan into this at all, is the idea that it's okay sometimes to be, innocent and naive when, to be honest, I feel like, again, I'm at that stage now where I'm very, very resistant to the idea of being naive or childish. I'm nearly turning 26. Like, I was ready like 10 years ago when I was doing my GCSE. Like, again, this might be more related to like personal experience, but there's been many, many times in my life where all I wanted was just for people to leave me alone and keep me quiet so I could just enjoy the things I liked. But it wasn't, things from when I was a kid I was still enjoying. There was things I learned to enjoy and get an appreciation out of. That's the sort of thing that brings out like the inner child in me, is that there are things that there are responses that I've learned through neurological genesis, and I could apply those to the way I enjoy like music or books or things I discovered. It doesn't mean that, I was, in the same mindset from 10 years ago. It just means that I've developed and grew up, and you have to somehow really, really try hard to stagnate for years without, becoming anyway. The idea is that it almost like, it almost implies a lack of consciousness, a lack of understanding. And no, it's in the words of the great Paul Weller, the more I see, the more I know, the less I understand. But you've got to at least know, you've got to at least be one of them. You've got to either know or understand. It's one of the most important, perhaps the most important aspects a child could possibly learn, or when they're growing up, is the difference between knowing and understanding. Knowing what it means when somebody loves you, knowing what it means when you've done wrong. And again, you don't even have to go to Peter Pan. You could go to Pinocchio, you could go to Sleeping Beauty, you could go to Cinderella, you could go to all sorts of classic children's books as well. And, well, Pinocchio isn't really a classic children's book, but the principle applies. And I can even drag down my entire Hans Christian Andersen books just to go the point further. But I think I've sort of made a point about that.
Do you watch Haikyuu? If yes, then you must be familiar with the iconic hype scene when Tsukishima gets hooked on volleyball. Tsukishima, one of the main characters of the show, started out indifferent and unmotivated to take volleyball seriously due to a bad previous experience. However, this changed during one particularly challenging match. Similarly, you can't proceed to the next level if you don't get honest with yourself and put in interest and commitment. Stagnation is not entirely bad. It depends on where you want to go and who you want to be. Think about the past 6 months. If you rarely find anything that makes you feel proud or motivated, it may be time for a change. Next, 70% life. Do you go through life feeling...
well, listen. Okay, now you've got me there. The stagnation is actually really, really interesting, because you would be very, very surprised, ladies and gentlemen, that how many times I've been told in my life to not even try, to literally don't even think about it. You will be very, very surprised that actually outside of, just these walls and, this aspect ratio, the mise en scène, I'm actually kind of almost surprised to admit that I think I've sadly surrounded myself with some very, very negative and very, very judgmental people. I say this because, if I am being completely fair and honest, if I'd learned to just listen to myself and literally say, you know what, actually, I don't need people telling me to do it. I just need to learn to get on with it. I didn't need any, grand speech. I didn't need any motivation whatsoever just to do RageCon 3. I didn't need to do any of that. I just wanted to do it, and I got on with it. Yes, okay, maybe sometime that's a slightly less interesting way of putting it, but it even so, some people just they either get on with it because they wanted to just actually put themselves to the test, or things become so bad that you have to sort of resort to drastic measures. But what I will say is that 2024 is not going to be that sort of year. 2024 is going to be the year where, if I have any sort of self-worth, if I have any sort of value in my talents at all, then I've got to actually use them. And whatever the consequences, good or bad they may be, then I can at least take refuge in the fact that they are my own. And you know what? That's one of the most important things of them all, is that they are entirely of my choice. And sometimes when things are a little bit out of my control, that means I can make the most out of not the best situation. In fact, the reason why I became so motivated to do so many videos for this year is because, well, it was either that or nothing at all. And because my job is not particularly very social, I would say, it means that anytime I don't have to go to work, it means that everything else is going to matter all the more. So there was always that.
Like you're not experiencing it fully just because you haven't achieved a certain goal. For example, having weight issues may make you feel that you can't get into a relationship or be happy because you don't have your dream body. Because of this, you live every day at 70%, not 100. If you're like this, we highly encourage you to break that mindset immediately. Why? Because according to professor and author Nir Eyal, humans are not wired for contentment. If you keep living life at 70%, there's a chance you will maintain it that way. From an evolutionary perspective, the lack of eternal satisfaction and pleasure is what made our ancestors strive harder to survive and evolve. According to Nir Eyal, if you achieve a certain goal, you will likely just move on to another one. There's no, if I'm gonna do this, then I'll be happy. No, that happiness starts with you and it can happen today. Work hard on your goals, play harder, and don't be afraid to dream. Live life to the fullest, no matter how cliche it may sound, because you never know which day is your last. For motivation, you can watch 6 things to remember when you doubt yourself.
Well, okay, now there might be literally okay, so the last thing I sort of want to say before we get into this last bit whatsoever is because, well, let me explain why, and I'll go over this, and this is sort of, again, it relates a lot to what I was saying earlier, is that, well, you say that, but, well, what exactly do people want from me? That's like, okay, so here's a really interesting thing, is that I know fully well that if I legitimately, like, I sat down and I wrote for like at least 3 hours a day, and I did this for the entirety of 1 month of just for the year, I could produce something that I could even probably take down to a publisher. And that's including going through rewrites, edits, and possibly taking a look at asking somebody to edit it for me for a price. I'm not asking for commissions right now or anything like that, but that's the point I'm trying to take. Okay, so what if I do that, and it somehow it works out, and that's that. I've proven that I've become a novelist. But then the next problem arises is that those are those hours that I could take away. But then what if I run into a situation where people are like, some people I have to like interact with or just like be around, they're not satisfied with that either. I think the problem is that, okay, I'll go over this story like one more time, because I feel like I know immediately what the issue is, but it's because it almost seems as though I'm not doing it out of love. I'm only doing it out of desperation for acceptance and validation. But and I think I may have mentioned the story before about this one time when I just lightly got into a conversation with somebody, and she just straight up asked, "Do I like have an off switch? Like, do I ever stop? Does my brain just like do I ever stop? Do I ever like go pause for a moment, or do I just like touch the grass or smell the roses or go to sleep for an extended period of time? Do I ever just like have like I mean, yes, listen, having a very industrious and laborious mindset is extremely desirable, because not everybody is motivated to work. Not everybody is motivated to to work disagreeable hours in a disagreeable job for a disagreeable salary. Not everybody is committed to doing things that are demanding as opposed to rewarding. That's not particularly out of the range of people's ideas. But I even remember one point where I straight up started talking, and then before I realized what I was doing, I was like, I almost like was like raising my voice, and suddenly got like really, really angry, and I was like, yeah, I sort of almost like I let it all out, I guess is what you could say. And then this woman like grabbed me by the shoulders. It just okay, calm down, sir, calm, please, sir, calm down, calm down. It's okay, it's okay. Yeah. No shit. It really was one of those moments, and she basically just said that I had some sort of issue with self-love, that I didn't work because I wanted to because I wanted to do better for myself or even to satisfy other people. I only did it almost out of a sense of atonement, as though work for me literally meant nothing but penance or appeasement. Actually, it would be the better word for it. I don't work because I work because she seemed to suggest that I work because it meant that I had to punish myself for something that I had done, and here we are. I don't particularly remember all the details about this, but I do remember that. I do remember that I got told that literally if I really want, and again, is that stagnation? But what happens if I become successful and like literally nothing changes? But if nothing changes, then well, as it says, nothing will change. So the only thing to do, ladies and gentlemen, is to to legitimately go for it and then see what happens. Because let me tell you once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just I'm going to say this one more time before I finish. It's no secret that I work hard. I'm going to be honest with that. I work hard. I enjoy working hard. I enjoy making videos. I enjoy the editing. I enjoy the animating. I enjoy documenting. I do the spreadsheets. I keep accounts of the things that I do. I want to constantly come up with new ideas for videos. I translate videos. I speak in many, many different languages. I'm very, very open with these sorts of things, and I'm always interested to try out new things and to explore other like musical genres like grime or jazz or country. But what I am not open to, ladies and gentlemen, is the idea that there is absolutely no worth in anything that I've done. I'm not open to the idea that people will just say no to me no matter what, and that is all that matters in the eyes of some people. I can't go through the rest of my life thinking that I'm trying to appease to the sort of people that I know fine well will not like me, and that they are as high as I could possibly reach in society. And I also know straight up that I'm absolutely not alone in this, because one thing you're going to know very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, is that below a certain level, society is entirely male. And maybe this is the sort of thing I'll try to explain a little bit more later on, well, in future videos. But yes, for the beginning of 2024, despite it really has sort of turned out a little bit like last year, is that is that in my own little world, is that as long as I work hard and I'm true and honest to myself, then that means that it's okay to change, but the changes should be of your choosing, and you should have a logical reason as to why you want to change or what it's really all for in the first place. And yes, of course, it's always good to do these logical changes before you actually do them. It seems stupid beyond words to say something like that, but that's the point. The reality, again, ladies and gentlemen, is that I'm still basically just a nobody at nearly 26. But that doesn't mean that's going to be like that for much longer. As long as I just try better or do something different with it. That's just how it is, and it's got to be better than nothing. Like I said, at any rate, who really wants to spend the rest of their life as a nobody anyway? Take care, and bye-bye for now.